Throughout the world, there are amusement parks dedicated to the happiness of our young generation. However, nothing can last, and due to various reasons, one by one, these amusement parks drop off public notice and slowly decay into an uncanny wasteland of creepy. So, if you enjoy abandoned creepy places, you'll love my top 10 creepy abandoned amusement parks. Tokakakanoma, Greenland, Hobara, Japan. This park had the unfortunate destiny to be abandoned twice. The first run around, the park was only open for 2 years, but during those 2 years, there were several deaths caused by the rides. It took only 10 years after its first closure to reopen. This time around, it went very well and lasted for a good 10 or so years. However, financial issues caused the park to close once more in 1999. Since its abandonment, the forest it sat near has started to reclaim the land, growing on top and around it, nearly completely forgotten by the world around it. Wonderland, Beijing, China. Wonderland was planned to be the largest theme park in all of Asia, but during construction, the project suddenly stopped. There were many financial issues that caused the whole project to be put on hold. The park would have had its own fairy tale land, complete with cottages and even a castle that looks almost completely similar to Disney's Cinderella castles. To this day, the incomplete castle is still standing, waiting for the project to be picked up again. Jazzland, Six Flags, New Orleans. Six Flags New Orleans was originally called Jazzland, but was taken over by the Six Flags Company. Almost like how Six Flags in San Antonio used to be solely Fiesta Texas before Six Flags took over the amusement park. But sadly, the New Orleans theme park would be doomed to a terrible fate. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast of United States, and Louisiana was devastated by the storm. The park was not safe to the severe flood and damages caused by the storm. There have been plans made to rebuild and reopen the park in the near future, but for now, it's been vandalized and closed to all public. Some vandals have decided to treat this closed down park as a sort of zombie land by turning some of the rides and statues into even more creepy and twisted versions of themselves. Dunaújváros Vidám Park, Dunaújváros, Hungary. This park was very popular during the 60s and 70s. Many people would flood to this park to enjoy themselves and forget about the real world. The park became even more popular during the Hungarian Revolution. Soon, however, there was a recession and people slowly stopped going to the amusement park. The money wasn't circulating anymore, and people couldn't afford to go to the park, whom had just raised their ticket prices due to maintenance costs. It closed a few years later in 1993. It remained standing for 20 years before they tore it down. Only a few of the buildings and attractions were left as a small reminder. Joyland, Wichita, Kansas, USA. A privately owned amusement park, Joyland was a family-run business. It was Lester Ottaway's dream to own and run an amusement park. However, after his death, his sons and widowed wife tried desperately to keep the park running. But the park became a target for disgruntled and rambunctious teenagers who would pull pranks and vandalize the park. It became such a problem that the park was forced to close because of the safety and lack of proper funds. It was closed in 2006 and remains that way to this day. Despite the family's attempts to rebuild it, Joyland is still the victim of vandalism. Land of Oz, Beach Mountain, North Carolina, USA. You're definitely not in Kansas anymore, Toto. This 16-acre theme park was modelled completely on the story of The Wizard of Oz. It allowed you, the visitor, to assume the role of Dorothy. You could skip down the yellow brick road, singing songs along the way with your own Scarecrow, Tin Man and Lion. It opened in the 70s and was intended to be a ski resort. It didn't have any of the typical rides, but it showed very famous scenes from the movie, including the home of Dorothy, the forest filled with apple-throwing trees. They didn't actually throw apples at you. And at the end of the park was the famous and glamorized Emerald City. It was based more on the book rather than the movie, but because it didn't have many rides or anything too exciting, the park closed down. In 1975, a fire broke out in Emerald City and caused many of the original props used in the movie to be destroyed. Pripyat Amusement Park, Pripyat, Ukraine. We've talked about this location before, if you remember, in this list. Pripyat, Ukraine fell victim to a nuclear accident in 1986. It left the city and the surrounding areas uninhabitable. But this park had an exceptionally bad timing. The day of its opening is when the nuclear accident happened. To this day, many parts of the city of Pripyat has dangerously high levels of radiation. Amuja Children's Park, Cheke, Pemba Island, Zanzibar. Not much is known about why it closed or what happened to this children's amusement park. Perhaps the location caused it to not have many sales, or maybe there was a tragedy that no one has reported. But either way, this park remains intact but abandoned. Gulliver's Kingdom, Japan. Another Japanese amusement park. Gulliver's Kingdom is exactly what it sounds like. An amusement park surrounded by the novel of Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. This allowed guests to feel as though they were in the novel. There still remains a life-size version of Gulliver laying on the ground, fake ropes around his body. The park shut down in 2001 due to poor ticket sales. Many speculate that this was due to the park's location, which is located right next to Japan's infamous suicide forest. Okpoland, Okpo City, Jeoju Island, South Korea. This family park closed in 1999 after a few years of its opening due to many fatal accidents. One of which involved a girl falling from a cute little duck roller coaster. The owner of the park said nothing, never apologized for the deaths, and continued to keep the park open much after the fatal accident. Suddenly, however, the owner of the park disappeared after the last accident and was never found. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's list, and if you did, leave a like. And if you want to see another top 10 about creepy abandoned places, click here for my top 10 abandoned places. And if you want to see more lists, subscribe. I try to do these every week.